Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're connecting from. I'm Valerio Palomba. I'll be your host for this webinar. Thank you for being with us today. I have the pleasure of being the moderator for this session. We're gonna talk about Elios drones, and specifically we have with us two heavyweights of the industry, Eralp Koltuk from Tupras in Turkey and Xiang Wang from Texo. Little bit of housekeeping. We're gonna still give a couple of minutes for everyone to connect. Very grateful for your presence. Today we had a record number of registrants for this event, north of 325. We have already have 55 attendees registering. We're just going to take a couple more minutes for people to connect and gather, and then we're going to start with the webinar. So we're just temporarily going to close our webcams for a minute, and we'll be with you very shortly. Thank you for your patience. And we're back. Thank you very much for your patience. Let's kick it off. If you're connecting with us just now, as an introduction, I'm Valerio. I'm one of the managers here at Flyability, and today's topic for the webinar would be Elios drone in the oil and gas industry, and we're going to focus on digitalizing asset inspections. Today with us, we have two prime speakers, Eralp Koltuk, who's Inspection Chief Engineer in Tupras. Hello, Eralp. And Xiang Wang was the Business Development Manager at Texo. In case you're wondering what the MD stands for, it's not a medical doctor. That would be my father. I'm the Managing Director for the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region for Flyability. A little bit of housekeeping as we're starting now. The webinar is meant to be interactive. You will have the opportunity to ask questions to our staff on the chat, We'll try to address as many questions as we can during the webinar. However, in the interest of the flow of things, we're going to try and keep those as related to the topic as we can. I want to take the opportunity also to thank Adam, was one of our salespeople who's going to be working behind the scenes to answer as many of these questions as possible. Rest assured, whatever question you will send, we'll either address it online live at the end of the webinar, or we will follow up with you. First of all, most people will be wondering whether there's going to be a recording available. The answer is yes. The recording has already started, and it will be made available to you a few days after the end of the webinar. So you'll have an opportunity to review the material and come back to us or to the speakers in case you have any particular follow-ups or questions. In terms of agenda, we're gonna very briefly talk about flyability, but we wanna jump as soon as possible into the meat of today's presentation, which is a transition from traditional inspection to drone-based inspection, based on experience from Tupras in Turkey. And then Xiang Wang is gonna tell us how they decided to make the jump from the Elios 2 to the Elios 3. Obviously, we are going to have a significant amount of time at the end for discussion and Q&As. I also take the opportunity to thank Letizia, Paola, and Halve, who have been instrumental in making this webinar happen. So let's get started with a short introduction about flyability. I see some familiar names here in the attendees list, so won't delve too much into this, but this is our motto. This has been our mission since the company establishment almost 10 years ago. No more humans doing dangerous jobs. This has really been the polar star really guiding our mission and the development of our product. We have a vision of making confined space entry redundant and really avoiding as much as possible unnecessary danger when it comes to dangerous industrial areas. We've been quite successful in that endeavor. Here you really see the development of our products throughout time. In 2016, we launched the very first UAV solution for confined spaces inspections. Elios 1 was a fantastic rugged machine that has been really through thick and thin and has really helped cement Flyability's reputation in the market as the go-to solution for UAV in confined spaces inspections. And then in 2019, Elios 2 came along, and there was a game changer in terms of ease of use and ability to operate in very complicated spaces, even for people with not a lot of UAV experience. And then we changed the game again with the Elios 3, which was launched last year and really became a bestseller in a matter of very few months, and has helped consolidate our reputation in the area for the best drone solution for confined spaces, and has really led to a plethora of discussions around the possibilities of integration with other payloads and the development of the drone itself in terms of autonomous capability. And perhaps this is something that we'll be able to cover in the Q&A. I'm sure there will be several questions about that. If there is one message that I would like to leave you with, it's really the fact that Flyability is not a startup anymore. It's a scale-up. We have by now worked with more than 1,500 customers globally. On average, most of these customers have 1.5 drone per company. So this tells you a lot about the rate of escalation that we had and how much really these solutions are developing at scales across several markets, chemicals, cement, power generation, and obviously oil and gas, just to mention one of them. So this is a proven solution. Is something that is used daily across the globe in some of the most dangerous industrial areas that you can possibly fathom, and I'm sure that most of the audience knows what I'm talking about. This is a very quick overview of some of the most high-profile companies that we've had the pleasure and the opportunity of working with during the years. Two in particular deserve a particular mention: Dow Chemical and Cargill. They both made the transition from clients to actually investors. They were so involved in and convinced by the goodness of the approach and the benefits of the approach of Flyability and respectively the Elios 2 and the Elios 3 that they respectively decided to partake into the Series B and the Series C of fundraising for Flyability. So that again goes to prove our track record and our ability to deliver at scale in very large industrial organizations across multiple sectors. And throughout our products, the three pillars in terms of value propositions, and it's something that our illustrious speakers will present to us today. They've really been built across these three core elements: improving safety, reducing downtimes, and lowering cost. We'll take a look at how, through different perspective of asset owners and inspection companies, the calculations of the ROI regarding these criteria can change, but at the core they remain the key value proposition that Flyability offers through its solutions. Elios 3, it's our latest solution. It was launched approximately a year ago. A revolutionary approach to confined spaces inspections. For those of you that are not familiar with Flyability products, the key characteristics is that we go where no drone has been before, and this is made possible by a number of technical and high engineering solutions, like including a LiDAR and a series of sensors into the drones that make it capable of flying even in areas with where no GPS signal is reachable. And this gives us the opportunity to explore and digitalize areas and perform close visual inspections in assets that otherwise will require very dangerous, very costly, and very time-consuming infrastructures like rope access or scaffolding. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Eralp. Eralp, good afternoon. Thank you for being with us today. Eralp, as I mentioned, is Inspection Chief Engineer at Tupras, one of the largest oil and gas manufacturer in Turkey. And it's also one of longest-standing Flyability clients. And Eralp is going to talk to us about the transition that Tupras as a company has made in going from traditional means of inspections like scaffolding and rope access to introducing solutions like the Elios 2 and the Elios 3. Eralp, thank you very much for your time, and the floor is yours.
Very well. So hello everyone. Can you help me with sharing my screen?
Yes, we are.
So Junior, I can get the notification for sharing my screen.
Everything is fine, Errol. You are sharing your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. So hello everyone, this is Eralp from Tupras Redefining. I've been working as an inspection chief engineer since 2018 and focusing on robotic inspection. So let me introduce Tupras. It was founded in 1955 as a state-owned company and privatized in 1991. We have 4 refineries with a total refining capacity over 30 million tons per year. In terms of inspection, we benefit from various technologies such as confined space inspections using Elios drones, storage tank inspections, flare tip inspections, thermal imaging, and stockpile measurement, among others. So I want to start by discussing how Elios has changed the way we perform inspections. In 2019, during our planned turnaround of the FCC unit, we needed to inspect the riser section. You can see the riser section on the left, highlighted in yellow. It's a 50-meter long pipe where heavy hydrocarbons from crude oil are broken off, cracked into smaller hydrocarbons. We wanted to inspect the section, including the cyclones on the top, which is a very challenging task. Previously, this is how we used to do it. First, you needed to cut the cap of the riser section, which is 24 inches in size. Then you had to lower someone inside to perform inspections, taking many precautions to minimize risks. You can see someone with white protective clothing in this photo. Qualified rope access personnel were needed for this task, equipped with a camera and a flashlight. We mostly relied on a set of photos and verbal comments. Once the inspection was completed, the riser cap needed to be rewelded. As I mentioned before, it was 24 inches in size and made of 5 chrome materials, so it is requiring post-weld heat treatment as well. If everything went well, this sequence will take no less than 2.5 days, equivalent of 170 human hours of work. Instead, we entered from the bottom flange and completed the visual inspection in several hours, including the cyclones and overhead vapor lines. The location of defects was recorded on video, allowing for detailed inspections of specific points. This gave us the opportunity to perform repeatable and comparable inspections. Furthermore, it was possible to generate a 3D model using a photogrammetry software, providing a 3-dimensional insight for further evaluation. The FCC riser inspection using Elios drone was a success. We eliminated the risks associated with confined space inspections by not sending anyone inside. Additionally, we saved human hours and the costs of scaffolding. Another example is the burner inspection of the reformer furnace. This is a generic illustration. As you can see, the burners are top mounted. The only way to access these burners was to install scaffolding, requiring over 1,000 cubic meters of scaffolding to be installed and removed. However, we complete this inspection in half a day. The quality of the images is very high, and the amount of detail we can see is more than satisfactory. It was another good example of a successful remote visual inspection. Next, PSA drums. These drums are in inert atmosphere and filled with nitrogen. In order to send someone in for inspection, you would need to use air cylinders and breathing apparatus. With Elios, it was possible to perform visual inspections without sending someone in. This is a very good example of semi-outdoor use of Elios. Normally, we only use Elios in confined spaces. However, in this case, you need to fly close to obstacles. This is the chute section of the delayed coker unit. Usually, we would need to install scaffolding, and the time window for inspection is not sufficient considering the time needed for scaffolding installation. This may be one of the best cases where we benefit from using Elios. Next is the platformer reactor inspection. The spaces are very tight, making it difficult to climb up and down. Although confined space entry was not eliminated in this instance, performing a detailed inspection using Elios is very effective. It allows for repeatable and comparable inspections. In the bottom photo, you can see the damaged scallop. So when it comes to air ducts, we normally use rope access professionals to perform inspections. However, it's quite easy with the Elios. This is the FCC regenerator, which is very dusty due to powdered catalyst. We don't need to install any scaffolding to perform this inspection. And stockpile measurement. It's a new feature that is yet to be tested in Tupras. All stockpiles are normally open air, except one big deep depot where we store coke. We are considering testing this feature soon. So I also want to mention the Flyability inspector software, which is quite useful for generating inspection reports and recording information for certain points of interest. That is all from me. I hope I could give you an insight how we benefit from Elios in our inspection works. Thanks for listening.
Well, indeed, Arab, that was incredibly informative. Thank you so much. I think it's quite difficult to have such a wide range of assets presented and in such a succinct way. I guess perhaps one of the most important questions that I would have for you, and I take this opportunity, by the way, to invite the audience to start asking questions. That the panel is available on your right, and feel free to start asking questions. We'll go through them as we go along. I guess that one of the key questions that I have for you as an asset owner is what were the biggest challenges for you as an inspector? Because you don't start as a digitalization expert or as an industry 4.0 expert. What were the challenges for you as an engineer, as an inspector, to convince your management to adopt this new method of doing things?
So as you all know, this oil and gas sector is the most conservative sector in the world. So they all want you to prove the concept before let you go. So it was 2019 when I connected with Mark, and I want to thank him. I want to say thank you to Mark from here. And we were not quite sure if we can do this, but the stake was too high. So we were talking about not cutting the cap of 24 inches size riser, and it was going to save us many cubic meters of scaffolding. So once we tried and get successful results, then it's easy to persuade people to tell this is the way to do inspections from now on. This is the way to go. So it was quite easy after this challenging example.
Thank you for that. One of the other recurring theme that comes from your presentation is really the ease of use. Once you made the decision internally, and once we've traveled to Turkey to perform the proof of concept, how easy was for your personnel to train and to adapt to this new method of inspecting? In other words, how easy was it to learn how to fly the Elios 2 and your newly received the Elios 3?
So let me say it was not quite difficult. As you know, flying in Elios 2 demands some experience. So all pilots have this experience. So it required some time to get their hands on this device. But with the Elios 3, it's very easy to fly an Elios 3. And once you perform inspections, you understand the boundaries of this device. So you have idea where you can use it or where you can benefit it most. So this cocker chute inspection was a very good example, because when you talk about Elios, you only think about confined space inspection, and Elios 2 was not capable of flying in open air. But on this instance, it was very useful, and we were very satisfied with the results. So you are using it, you are getting experience, and you can understand how to benefit from this device most, and it comes with that.
Once again, Errol, thank you very much for sharing your experience. I would like to share with the audience the reconstruction that we performed of the FCC to really give an idea of the quality of the images that can be captured, or rather the quality of the 3D models that can be rebuilt using the photograms captured with the 4K camera mounted by the Elios 2. So this should be on your screens momentarily. And Basically, what you're seeing here, it's a 3D model. It's a photogrammetry model that we run through Pix4D Mapper. And this effectively has given us and the client, which in particular case was Tupras. This was one of the outcomes of the proof of concept that we performed at the refinery. It gives them the possibility to really analyze at a centimeter or even a millimeter level of detail the conditions inside of the FCC, categorize the defects and quantify the number of refractory material that was missing in order to make an informed decision regarding the maintenance process to put in place afterwards. So even the Elios 2, it's not just about the visual information, but there's an additional layer of analysis that can be made in terms of digital information and better informed decision with better actionable intelligence that come from a 10 minutes inspection. Then obviously all of this is significantly improved with the deployment with the introduction of the Elios 3, which mounts a LiDAR, which brings digital data to a whole new level. That is a great segue into the next topic of discussion. Errol, once again, thank you very much for your time and contribution. Before we move on to Xian Wang, I'd like to share the first question that we have today, one of two from the poll. And the question is, what are the biggest challenges in your current role as audience? So you should be able to see the questions now on your screens. We have 5 options available for the audience. Resistance to innovate, lack of resources. This could be specialized personnel or simply availability of funds, unscheduled shutdowns, lack of training, and excessive and inefficient bureaucracy. I'm just going to give it another few seconds to collect a bit more responses. And Errol, if you're still with us, perhaps we can comment the results of the first poll. I'm just going to give it another few seconds to reach the quota of 50%. At 49%, and there we have it at 51%. So let me share the results. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, although it's definitely we can see that the majority of the answers go really into the direction of resistance to innovate and lack of resources. Bureaucracy, I guess, once we start talking about large organizations, that definitely plays a part. Then lack of training and unscheduled shutdown. Errol, do these feel familiar? I mean, you certainly talked about the resistance to innovate, and it is indeed a very conservative industry. But what about lack of resources? Was it once proven the case study? Once you've proven the return on investment, was it difficult to unlock resources for the Elios 2 and the Elios 3?
No, let's not say lack of resources. Once you can come the management with the numbers, it's easy to persuade. But let's say excessive and inefficient bureaucracy is what I would like to vote if I could vote, because you need to prove how it works, and you don't always the opportunity to test in real life conditions. So you need to wait for the exact case to make it shine. So FCC riser inspection was our luck, because if we don't have this kind of opportunity, we couldn't have an opportunity to try that out. So I would go with that.
Well, that's a great answer. Thank you. And I think it gives us also the opportunity to underline how the greatest majority of the sales that we make actually do happen in similar situations to the one they experience with Tupras. There is a need. You call us, we perform a proof of concept. You run your numbers, which almost always come back as very, very green in terms of return on investments, and that unlocks the purchase, the deployment, the training, and the opportunities. Adolf, thank you very much for your feedback also on this poll, and we'll now move on to our second speaker, Xiang Wang, Business Development Manager. Xiang, thank you very much for being with us today. You're truly one of the most experienced people in the industry, I would say, when we talk about UAVs applied to the maritime and oil and gas industry and anything in the middle. I think you're also one of the very few people who has experienced every drone from probably I want to say gimbal, which was really sort of the father of Elios 1, all the way to the Elios 3. Again, we're very lucky to have you here, and I'll let you share your experience with the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Junior, for the introduction. That's very humbling. And thank you for the opportunity for Flyability to give me this chance to speak more about this amazing technology and the benefit that comes with it. So, if I may take control.
It's all yours, son.
Okie dokie. So good afternoon again. I'll briefly introduce myself. I'll briefly introduce the company I work for, Texo. I'll show a case study, and then I'll talk about other further application. So my name is Xiang. I'm 13, 14 years now in the sector in oil and gas and marine. I suppose the highlight in this introduction here is that I was involved in using drones for FPSO crude oil tank inspections in 2015, and I believe that was the year where there's a lot of world firsts happening around, and I would like to think that I was involved with one of the world firsts for on-station FPSO, and this was before even the Elios 1 was released in public. So if you remember Junior's presentation, the Elios 1 was back in 2016 when it was released. So we were using other different types of drones in 2015, and I can say that the technology has moved on leaps and bounds. A little bit about Texo. So you can consider Texo as a service provider. We are involved in many services. As you can see, we're in engineering fabrication, workspace solution, asset integrity, port services, recruitment technologies. Recently, we acquired airport capacity solutions. And for myself, I represent the drone survey and inspection division. And the sectors, as you can see, we're in construction, energy, environment, utilities, nuclear, and of course, oil and gas. Now, what you see on the screen here is an example of the crude oil tank. To give you in context, even 10 years ago, for people who work in offshore and onshore environment, you'll get inspection engineers or integrity engineers who manage program, but will never have seen what a cargo oil tank would look like. And a lot of times, the work packs that you get are, in a very thick folder. You almost could use it to work out. And the drawings inserted are all 2D drawings. So back then, you highly rely on people to know what they're doing, what they are inspecting, and also to organize the data in such a way that is actually accurate and meaningful for the guys on shore to make accurate assessment. Now, since the Elios drone came into picture, things has changed completely, as you can imagine. So what you see on the right here is what it could look like with a person inside. It's more or less 20 meters high, if you can see here. And then on the left, you can see what the Elios is like, against the manway. Now, the benefit of the Elios drone is you can fly in, as you know, in places where you don't have to put people inside. And I believe Errol has already given you plenty of examples of what quality of images, the level of detail you can get out of it. So here is an example of the level of detail you can get inside an oil tank. Of course, this doesn't remove the need for ship owners, tanker owners, oil operators to prepare a tank in such a way that you can provide meaningful data. However, as you know, oil and gas is such a cost-sensitive, high pressure, intensive environment. Sometimes people will want you to give information in a certain environment before everything is completely cleaned out. So, we'll just work around it, but we can still give meaningful data without putting people inside in kind of confined spaces. Now, I'll give you a brief context of the benefits in terms of using the Elios drones. So speed, safety, savings. Speed, of course, you can save from days to hours, depending on how many tanks you're looking at. Sometimes if you say a typical tanker, you get a dozen tanks, 12 tanks, and you may be able to complete inspection in a matter of days compared to weeks. And then, of course, safety, you collect data remotely without having to put people in harm's way. And the savings in terms of sending a lot of people, depending on which part of the region you are, sometimes people will be happy to send a lot of people because labor is cheap, whereas in other geographic locations, you may not be able to afford that. Or if your asset is in remote places where POB is premium, then the Elios will be a great answer. Now, the other thing that I haven't put on here is some other residual value. For example, in some cases where you might have to put scaffolding to carry out a full inspection. So scaffolding, as you can imagine, is not only costly and also taking a lot of time, but also the act of taking the scaffolding in and out of those confined spaces can be quite damaging. So if you have a coated tank, once you've done your work, the act of removing the scaffolding could cause more damage to your tank, which you wouldn't want to before returning your asset back into service. So that's another thing to bear in mind when you want to consider adopting technologies versus traditional means of doing your maintenance and inspections. Now I'm going to hand it back to the organizer to give you a very quick video of what the Elios 3 look like in these spaces. So Paula, would you like to take control? Or Junior?
Yeah, I'll be happy to share the video. Just remember to reactivate your microphone as soon as you see the video so that you can comment on it. And video is coming right up.
So good. Okay, thank you. Now, what you can see here is Elios 3 flying inside crude oil tank with no man entry, with no lighting. Now, this is one of the first ones that we did. So like you can see in the context, you can immediately see the scans being built up on your left-hand screen in terms of the spaces. Now, what I wanted to highlight here is, imagine you're inside an environment where all the structures look almost the same. And you get bodies of inspectors or even classification societies or surveyors who would want to inspect this kind of tanks, but they want to do it remotely. So how do you give them confidence? So as you can imagine, what Errol had rightly said previously, oil and gas is one of the most conservative industry out there. People want you to prove the point before they actually let you go ahead and do it, do the rest of the activities. So here we can see that not only you can navigate freely, but you can also pinpoint immediately where this drone had been, so that you can confidently say that, right, this inspection we've done on this bulkhead, and bulkhead number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is okay, or the 6 underlying bulk is fine, or this particular hotspots is covered. but then you'll be able to remotely say that this work scope is completed. Now, okay, thank you. Let me move on to the next one. Happily talk.
If I just may intercept, and thank you so much for sharing this video, which again it's incredible. I guess addressing also, without wanting to interrupt your flow, but talking about one of the questions that we've already received and something that Adolf also touched upon. Can you tell us how long does it take to go from flying, collecting the data, and coming up with the model that we just saw?
That depends, but in this one, I'm going to share screen again. Do I have control?
Back to you.
Okay. Now, so to your point, Junior, the model you saw just now, yes, it's instantaneous almost. So you do one flight, you'll be able to see I will call a sparse cloud of the flight that is taken. Now, that in itself will be able to give you the spatial awareness. You'll be able to see your area of coverage, your level of confidence in terms of data you get. However, if you want to take this even further, you could do 3 or 4 more flights for a tank of this size. So you cover areas, or the shadow areas, for example, underneath a walkway, or behind a girder, or behind the pipeline that you can see here. And this, each flight is taking what? I would say 8 minutes. And then you take this data. Beauty of this software, the Flyability and the good software developers have done is they make it easier for us to export it into a separate software. Any photogrammetry software or any LiDAR processing software that you can put all the data together. So you can take the data from the 4 flights and combine them into this one beautiful model. And I say beautiful because I just love tanks. And you'll be able to work on it basically. Now, one of the benefits, as you can imagine, is you can use this to interrogate a space where, for example, there's a defect, but the area is dangerous, but there was a leak involved in one of the pipe or the valves. Now, the operators will face challenges in terms of planning your remedial action. So what Elios can do is you can go in there, not only just scope it out, but also to build a model that will allow your engineers to plan and design a remedial scope that not only know where to cut, how do you want to fabricate, how do you want to install it, without having to send people inside tank or having to mobilize multiple teams out there. So that's one of the benefits when it comes to this. Now, before I forget, Junior, for reminding me, the software you can, you do not have to be an owner of an Elios to run the software. You can interrogate the data immediately just by installing the inspector on your machine, and you'll be able to access it anywhere. So that's one of the flexibility I think Flyability has done very well in giving the surveyors, the operators, the flexibility to look at the data. Now, the other thing I would like to talk about is what else can you do with this data is the same data, you'll be able to combine it with other top site data as well. I do not have an oil and gas example, but I thought I would give you one of the ones that Texo had done, in this case, an underground survey of a sewage pipe or a drain pipe, where, for example, a construction developer will want to dug a hole, or they want to lay a road over a certain section above ground, but they want to be sure where this underground pipe or sewage ducts, if you like, runs underneath. And then if you talk about areas where they have been built decades ago, you wouldn't have accurate data, then the Elios tree will be able to do magic for you. So for us as service providers, if you like, we will combine our skill sets, in terms of photogrammetry, land surveying, and also the ability to fly drones underneath in confined spaces, and provide this kind of data for you to be able to make good decision in terms of where to excavate and where to pave your roads. Now, to summarize, what does it mean in confined spaces in terms of Elios 3? So in my opinion, I think it gives better confidence than the Elios 2 in terms of the coverage. It definitely gives people more confidence in eliminating the need for man entry, especially in complex spaces. So for guys from shipping industries, you probably would know semi-submersibles, ballast tanks. They're very, very complex. So depending on what stage of the asset you want to look at, it could be just after fabrication or after a long campaign or a shutdown or even life extension. Without sending people down there, you can use the Elios 3 to navigate those very complex spaces. Imagine trying to figure out integrity inside a maze of tanks. So I think Elios 3 is really good for that. The third point is the better visibility for remedial work. So to touch on the point earlier, if you've got a problem in your plant or in your tanks, and you don't want to send people inside, it's an excellent tool to give you better visibility and also for planning. The final output is also quite useful, and you can export it for engineering studies. The scan model can be merged with other existing 3D model. A lot of places will have legacy laser scans, and you can use the Elios 3 data output to merge with them to give you a more complete model. And I believe there's talks of nowadays, digital twin is the big buzzword, whereas you rely on people sending or setting up ground stations or from terrestrial scans, but it will miss about 30 to 40% that is above height or underground. And the Elios 3 could be your solution. And then the last point, I think I touched on the semi-submersible. And the last point is to reduce POB offshore, shorten your downtime, and minimum risk of incidents. Now, other applications I would like to share with you is something that I'm also planning to do more is pipework inspection. So Errol has rightly say about, people think of Elios as in the context of confined spaces, but you can see in some, most process plants have lots of pipeworks, which, are hard to access. Given if it's not too windy, you'll be able to put Elios 3 in those very congested spaces above ground. So that's something that I'm very excited to do more with our clients. And so touched on earlier, complementary 3D model to existing digital twins. And then for assets, for floating structures that are on dry dock or on dock sites, I would like to explore more on the under-deck inspections. So I know for the North Sea, because I'm based in Scotland, the North Sea can be quite windy, but on the odd summer day, or if you are operating from somewhere that has low winds, you'll be able to use your Elios 3 to carry out under-deck inspections. So, say you've got drainage pipe work or any jacket legs you want to look at, I think this is one of the great applications. Now, in other cases, which is not so much related to oil and gas, but I thought it's worth mentioning, is congested airspace operations. So my colleague, I'm pretty sure he's in the audience here, is actually using them to fly in the middle of London to inspect, the roofs or to survey. People forget that it has a very basic thermal camera inside as well, so you can use that to carry out basic thermal cameras, thermography inspections in congested spaces like the City of London. And then last two is monitoring or repeat inspection, as most people will use it for, and also for a tool for emergency response. So, God forbid there's an incident, there's a missing person, and you don't want to put people in harm's way into those spaces, but you want to quickly identify areas where the people could have been. Again, Elios 3 could be a very useful tool for emergency response. So that's it for me.
Well, Shyam, thank you very much for this very extensive overview of the capabilities of the Elios 3 system. I wanted to share, it's important to talk about digitalization and the benefits in terms of cost and time reduction, but obviously health and safety, especially in such a dangerous industry, should be front and center. And that's specifically why I found very interesting the point that you mentioned regarding using the thermal camera for subject identification. And I wanted to share this very short video that gives really an idea of what the thermal capabilities of the Elios drone look like. Video should be coming up shortly. And again, I think, you know, when we talk about confined space confined space assets and accidents and access, very often we have these tragedies where, you know, the first person goes in and falls in sick, the second one goes in, and then the third one, and very soon we're talking about a very large death count. So the ability of the drone to deploy this thermal camera definitely. Have you ever come across Xiang, situations in which this was actually you know, something that you wish you had with you, or do you see indeed situations particularly offshore where this could be of service? I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me now, Junior?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, it's quite exceptional cases. And obviously, I'm not a thermographer. My good colleague, James Arnold, is a thermographer, will be able to speak more about that. But you get process plans who want to survey any, you know, heat loss points or the condition of your plantings, for example. And, you know, those are one of the most popular usage for thermography. And I suppose in some cases, you might use the latent heat to be able to see the integrity of your heating insulation for those inside the furnaces and stuff like that. So yeah, you can use that for insulated assets, whether it's hot or cold. But I strongly advise, you know, working with a certified thermographer to interpret the data rather than just going ahead and see, oh, that looks hot now. Well, maybe it's just a reflection of the sun, things like this. So, but it can be useful if you know how to use it.
Yeah, especially because the thermal camera, as I was mentioning, is not particularly high resolution. It's not calibrated, so that obviously poses some issues. I have two hot questions for you, Xiang. The first one is, how do you deal with the battery restrictions? Because I think it goes without saying, and obviously we're quite biased on the issue, but you've spoken about it. People have commented on it. The progress on the Elios 1 to Elios 2 in terms of payload and capabilities of the drone itself, in terms of data capture, are remarkable. However, one of the biggest objections that we still get, and we're getting questions on it as we speak today on the webinar, is the duration of the battery. As a professional, as someone with almost 10 years of experience in this industry, how do you deal with this particular restriction of this particular drone? You mentioned a flight time of approximately eight minutes. It's not a deal breaker, otherwise you wouldn't be using it, and you wouldn't be using it as often as you have, but how do you deal with it?
I would echo somebody say on the forum somewhere that, you know, 8 minutes is actually quite, you know, enough for inspection if you had done proper planning and preparation before that. So obviously you want to make good use of that. That also, you know, is good practice. You know, you don't want to leave the tank open for too long. So you want to, you know, sit down with the engineer, go through drawings, identify the areas of interest first, and then when you put the drone inside, you want to do the first flight to scout the area first, just to make sure that the environment is safe for continued inspection, then start, you know, executing your inspection efficiently. So that's the basic philosophy of any confined space inspection, I would say. But in terms of, you know, the short time, if you want to do a lot of it, and I personally worked with teams that done, you know, more than 20 flights per day, So, again, then you can work with the site to say that, right, we want to do a lot. It would be beneficial for the owner and also for the site operations to access these areas quickly and rapidly. So what do you do? So to me, one of my workaround is get lots of batteries and also have charging stations set up nearby. And then as you complete each flight, rotate your batteries and then use the fresh ones and just keep going at it. And that's my advice. And just to bring preparation, that will allow you to do as many flights per day as the pilot can handle. Sometimes it can be quite disorientating. So I'm pretty sure 20 batteries is more than enough for you to do a whole vessel in a week, shall we say. So that's battery management. And I want to point out is, one of the benefits of this way of working is you do not have to rely on any, I know people might have seen other tethered solutions out there, but that comes with snagging race. That comes with having to put people inside to make sure that it's okay. But if you take advantage of the Elios, you can still take advantage of the benefit of not putting people inside those spaces by having those planning, battery stations, and lots of spare batteries back out to continue doing it. And for people who were still thinking like, oh, why don't Flyability come up with something that can fly longer? And I can share my experience is there's no silver bullet when it comes to drones. There's always a trade-off. If you want to make it fly longer, you might have to increase the battery size, which in terms make it heavier or bigger, which in terms may not be able to get into tighter spaces. There's always a trade-off. If it's heavier, you might not want to risk it falling from certain areas. Whereas Elios is actually designed such a way that if it falls down, the damage is minimal. Whereas if you want to fly longer, again, there are other factors you have to consider. There's always a trade-off when it comes to designing drones. So I would say, for me personally, I'm quite happy with the 8 minutes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. I guess that that's an incredible endorsement to the capabilities of the system. And again, I think that you're probably one of the people that has collected the most flight hours with drones in general, but in particular with our system. So that carries definitely a lot of weight, pun intended, and gravitas to the answer. So thank you very much for it. We're gonna open it for the second poll for question to the audience, and the question is, what is the biggest obstacle to the implementation of a drone program inside your organization? And we're just gonna let this sit with the audience for a few seconds and give you possibility to vote, and I will comment on it in a short minute. Thank you. We have basically, well, we're actually past the majority of the audiences, so I'll close the poll and share the results. I think here in this case, it's pretty self-evident that we have two clear answers. More than the majority of the respondents have mentioned costs associated with acquiring drones, and a little less than 40% changing the way we work, the procedures. I guess we're dealing with a very, very educated audience, as basically only 2% of you have mentioned that you were not aware that you could use drones for this. Shenwong, Texo is one of the largest fleet of Elios drones and drones in general out there. without sort of spoiling too much the inner workings of the organization. But what kind of ROI do you get from this kind of drone works, and is it difficult for a medium enterprise such yourself to invest in this kind of solutions?
I suppose I can only speak for enterprise like Texo, where we have other skill sets and capabilities that are able to take advantage of the Elios 3. You know, we're not just there to use Elios 3 only and then just to try to maximize it. You need to use it with other skills of surveying, you know, land surveying, inspections, or even RIT. So that's one of the things I'm working on right now. Is in the shipping industry, they have this thing called the remote inspection technique, which you know, is becoming more and more popular, and more people in the industry is receptive to it. Which, you know, remote inspection technique, you know, we're talking ROVs, crawlers, and in this case, of course, drones. So you want to be with a crew of people who are skilled in operating these robots, including the Elios 3, to be able to go and give your operators or the clients the ROI, the combined ROI. So I think there's no simple answer per se, but you know, if you know how to use it with the other things that you have to solve the problem, you know, the problem tend not to be straightforward in oil and gas. It's always a complex one. So you want to bring together other tools you have with the guys who know how to use it to get the ROI. I think this, maybe I'm generalizing here, but I suppose a lot of people who face resistance is basically not drone operators or specialists themselves. They're probably just like, you know, let's buy one, but they don't know how to maintain it. They don't know how to plan the scope. They don't know how to use the data. So it became a very expensive paperweight on your shelf. So that's, you know, I wouldn't be surprised there are a few out there who are like that. So this is why what service provider like Texo is different is, you know, we know the score. We do this every day, you know, right? You know, it's fast, quick, safe. But what that means is also our jobs tend to be quite short. So we just want to go from one client to the other to the next, but we'll be able to do it quickly. So imagine, I'll use this analogy, you know, do you want to, you know, if you have a toothache and you want to see a surgeon, you want one that, you know, is going to you know, just come out from medical school, or the one that has 20 years experience and able to finish that in 1 minute. It might cost almost the same, but you want the guy who knows how to do it and gives you the ROI immediately, and that's why you pay them that prices. So that's the analogy I would use.
It's a very apt analogy, and thank you very much for it. I'd like to bring back Errol into the conversation. Errol, perhaps you can join us for this final session, because there's actually a question that I really would like to tackle with the both of you, because it goes back to this sort of 39% of people saying it's about the procedures and changing the way it works. And throughout my time at Flyability, one of the constant objections that we keep getting, no matter how much education material, how much webinars we do, how many case studies we publish, is ATEX and intrinsically safe. So I'd like to hear from Errol first, and then from Xiang Wang. Errol, what kind of procedures, what kind of measures, what kind of risk management tools have you put in place to be able to use this in ATEX areas? You obviously showed us that in some situations, in some particular conditions, you have used nitrogen purging. What else is out there, and what can you say to the topic of you know, this is a no-go area and we will never use drones because they're not intrinsically safe?
So this was our number one concern before adopting Elios, I must say. So in short, you need to have a hot work permit in order to use drones in a confined space. But sometimes the benefits you use from drones are so much, then the health and safety guys try to, let's say, bend the rules by making constant gas measurements, and they are trying to help you actually. So normally they are not saying no, you cannot do it because this is not ATEX certified device. they tend to be more helpful by allowing you by checking constant gas measurements and making sure of it is safe to run this environment. So most of the time we don't have any problem, but of course you cannot fly this device whenever you want, wherever you want. It's still a problem, but at the moment there is no alternative because drone itself is an ignition source. It doesn't seem in the near future there will be an ATEX drone solution, but we are pushing the boundaries, and so far we don't have any problems with it.
Indeed, I really like this expression, pushing the boundaries. You definitely are at Tupras, and we certainly wish and hope that the more companies will follow your lead. Xiang Wang, I really would like to take you back to the first day that you took a drone offshore. I would have liked to see the face of the HSE people. Jokes aside, what sort of how do you sell it, like literally to the people of offshore? I'm sure that that when we talk about this kind of assets, that the burden of proof for ATEX and non-ignition must be even higher than in land.
I think I'm going to build on Errol's comment in terms of that. Well, typically operations like that, you want to plan with your operators weeks, if not months in advance, so that everyone who has concern, they'll have their concern addressed. So you will probably be sit through meetings like hazard identification or hazardous operations sessions where you sit down and go through all the possible risks, all the possible hazards, and how you're going to mitigate them. You know, it could go into 10, 20 pages, but you have to go through it. But you find that a lot of times, you know, they can be addressed and the risk can be reduced in such a way that actually it's not too different than an inspection engineer going out there with their digital camera. And the only added risk is you get this camera up in the air, and the weight of this is about the weight of a seagull. Right? So it's the same hot work permit as you would with a digital camera, with the drop object risk of a seagull dropping off the sky, but the cage, there's plenty of videos out there demonstrating how actually mild the impact is. The cage was so cleverly designed that the impact is really little. And then you get other risks like or what if you lose it, and how you retrieve it. Then again, it goes back to you're sending the right people to do the job. You have the proper planning in advance to do it. So without diverging too much away from the question about hot work permit, so you just have to try and give the operators that reassurance that we understand this is how we do it. Hot work permit, this is how we do it. Where do we charge the station? Okay, that might be a high risk. Have somewhere close by, like a safe zone or a habitat to do your battery charging, and then just work on it that way.
Fantastic. So if I could sum it up, due diligence, negotiation, say internal education, and risk mitigation when it comes to the most obvious source of ignitions like battery charging. Excellent. Thank you very much. I think that covers it, or certainly does for me. We're already past the hour, but we have a couple of questions that are very interesting that I'd like to ask you both. Errol, this is for you, and it's coming from Minoru Nimura. Dear Errol, thank you for your presentation. It's very informative. My question is, how often do you use drones for your inspections? Did you use drones only during shutdown inspections? Any possibility to use it in daily maintenance work? So I guess if I could just rephrase it, what's the deployment time from, oh, we have a problem, to let's put in the drone to have a look?
So of course you have your batteries fully charged in order to make it use whenever you want. So unplanned inspection, let's say, they are very rare because most of the time your batteries are not full and you cannot always keep them full. Mostly we use them in planned turnarounds, because in planned turnarounds most of the time you don't need to use hot work permit because all the equipments are steamed out, and also you have a safe entry permission. So that means even a human can go and work inside. So you don't need to have any extra, let's say, a permit for using drones. And except from turnarounds, when let's say it depends of the situation. In some places, let's say in furnace inspections, you just turn the furnace off. Then you can go in and make your inspections, or let's say about stacks, air ducts. So it's very easy to perform these kind of inspections. But of course, when it's difficult to mitigate the hot work permit situation, then we choose not to perform using Elios.
Excellent. Thank you very much for it. Seung-Won, this one I think there's very few people that are better placed to answer it, considering your past as a ship inspector, as a class inspector. Sorry. What level of recognition or legitimacy of approval do inspections performed with the Elios drones have with class societies?
I want to say disclaimer, I'm not a naval architect or a surveyor. I'm with a service provider that is approved by a classification society. So just to be very specific. And with classification societies, you will have to go through a process of getting yourself approved to using, as I mentioned before, the RIT, the remote inspection technique. Then they will give you a criteria in terms of, okay, would you be able to perform this task in terms of the quality of the images, the ability to pick up defect. How do you perform this? Are you familiar with the nomenclature? How do you manage the data? All of that is not just the drone itself. It's actually the people who do it, the knowledge that comes with it, and the organization that make this possible. So it does take a bigger team to put yourself in the position where a classification society was saying like, yeah, show us what you can do, prove it. Okay, go ahead and do it. The other caveat I want to mention as well is even within the same classification society, the surveyors may have different opinions as well. So if you have a surveyor in Aberdeen saying, okay, if you want to do it in Singapore, they might want to witness it first before they let you go and do the job. But I would say that if you're able to get the first classification society approved, they're more or less the same for the other. They're all under IX. So if you can get one approved, the chances are the second and the third one will be approved fairly easily, we hope.
And thank you, Seung-Won. And for the record, Flyability and our drones have already been approved by several naval registries, including RINA, Registro Italiano Navale, Bureau Veritas, and others. But indeed, thank you for the answer. I guess I feel very privileged to have you both here, because I think it's one of the very few webinars at Flyability where we actually have the opportunity to combine points of view on one of the most heated debates that we have, which is this Manichaean view, this opposite view of insourcing versus outsourcing. So we have an asset owner like Tupras that has decided to internalize the competencies and the skills regarding doing drones inspections, and we have one of the prime examples of an inspection company providing these services in outsourcing. Errol, the question, let's say the final question that I have for you is, knowing everything that you know now about how to run an internal drone program, if you could go back in time, what would you do differently? Or let me put it another way, what advices do you have for other asset owners that are thinking about deploying a drone program internally?
So insourcing suits us better because we have 4 different refineries, and with one device we can cover these 4 different refineries. And as you also pointed out, the flexibility and availability 24/7. So yes, when you need it in an hour. So this would be a major concern about outsourcing it. So I would always go with insourcing. But of course, outsourcing has its own benefits, such as future proofing. If you own the device, so whenever a new model comes up, you always think about upgrading it. So that may also an item to change your mind. But in our situation with 4 refineries, insourcing is the way to go for us.
Excellent. And let me just say to that regard that, you know, the Elios 3, we specifically built it with modularity really as part of the design, meaning that we really would like this to be the last drone that companies will buy. There is more than one auxiliary port at the back of the drone that will allow for payload integration. We're just starting now with the integration with the radiation sensor, and there will be more to come. So I think as an OEM, I really give us a pat on the back in terms of making sure that the drone technologies, that these drone technologies as future-proof as possible, properly, because we've listened to feedback like those of companies like Tupras saying, you know, we can be buying a new drone every 18 months or so. Xiangwang, from your perspective for outsourcing, what is still sort of the secret sauce? What is still the argument that makes you win contracts and grow your business? This is obviously a gig economy. Like it's always easier to hire someone to do the cleaning rather than doing the cleaning yourself. But what is really sort of the key added value that a company like Texo can provide vis-a-vis internalizing this kind of competencies?
I think there are not many operators out there who has an appetite to insource yet. So I will say that, you know, to start with. So that gives the service provider us a huge opportunity to basically fill that gap. And to build on that, we were able to take care of a lot of the risks, the liability, the training, the permissions. I know Elios 3, you probably don't need to worry about that, but every time people mention drones, they also expect flying, you know, up in the air, open air as well. So you can do the scope together. Now, this is where, you know, entities like Texo can take care of all that headache for you. And furthermore, also the data processing. You know, not every organization will has this kind of a end-to-end solution where you can take care of the data capture as well as the reporting and data processing all under one roof. So we basically provide the convenience for a lot of operators to be able to take care of that. I think that's probably boils down to it.
Thank you very much. I think it's time to wrap it up, and you'll see that we're gonna share with you as a sort of as a goodbye presence to thank you for your attendance some handouts. They will be available in the menu on the right. For those that have already sort of left the webinar, we'll make sure to make these to you available in the follow-up email should you require them. But we wanted to leave the brochure with Elios 3 if you were interested to know more about the technical specifications, and indeed one of the most recent case studies that we have completed with none other than Texo on FPSO, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, there should be also the one that we performed in the past with Tupras. I take this final minutes to thank you both, Erap and Xiangwang, for your attendance, for your participation. I take the opportunity to thank the audience for the questions. Do be in touch. Send us your comments. You also have an opportunity to vote and to give us feedback on the webinar. Please do. It's the main way that we have to hear your feedback, to hear from you, and to improve for the next one, as there will be a next one. And stay tuned to know more about Flyability and our upcoming events. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your patience, and looking forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Goodbye.
Bye.